that's actually like one of the big points of like backlash we get is like a lot of companies, greenwashing, bluewashing, there's all these terms saying, yeah, we're doing it, check the box, we donated our 50,000 for the year and like let's move on. We actually create this like metric, this move the needle metric that basically says if you're a company of this size and this stature, these are some boots that you should be looking to fill to ensure that you're not just like, you know, stamping a certificate but not actually walking the walk.
Today on the podcast, we have the pleasure of being joined by Ricky Marton, who is a tech-focused, impact-driven professional and current PhD candidate. He's got a really solid background in sustainable business strategy, marketing, design, social entrepreneurship, a bunch of stuff. And he's founded several small businesses. He's worked extensively in corporate partnerships, and he holds a bunch of advanced degrees at ASU, University of Colorado. And he is starting an incredible startup today that we're going to be talking about some of the ways that he's working and using AI and what he's doing. Welcome to the show today, Ricky.
Hey, Jaden, really excited to be here. Excited for the conversation we're going to have here.
So super stoked to have you on the show. I guess tell us a little bit about your company and what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe to kind of give the precursor, the really quick background, my entire career essentially has been revolved around the concept of how to use business as a catalyst for good.
Okay.
And so my master's as well as the PhD was really answering and asking the question of how can you help companies kind of streamline what they're working on in order to create maximum impact while still driving business change. And so that all kind of boiled down together to this concept of partnerships, right? And so Koru as a business, we use artificial intelligence and other advanced tech to really look at a company, what industry they're in, where they operate geographically, what their employees care about, all these different data sets that we put together. And then we use our system, our data-driven, research-backed algorithm to basically say, here's are some areas that you can support. These are some creative ideas that you can explore. These are some partnership opportunities. And we pull it all together into basically, we like to say, a crystal ball because we have predictive analytics, as well as a dating app. So we actually match them to these organizations that can push forward with these goals.
Okay. So I kind of get an idea of what this is, but like for your 2-sentence elevator pitch of like, we're Koru and we do, what would you like?
Yeah, so we're working on that one still. Just kidding. It evolves week by week, but we are a software service that helps companies streamline their sustainability initiatives and partner with organizations that can push forward with these goals effectively.
Okay, so give me an example of like a company that you have worked with or you've worked with and kind of like what you've done with them.
Yeah, so one example that we like to use is JBT Corporation. They're a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company, and they came to us and were like, we are interested in being more sustainable. We want to increase our ability to X, Y, and Z, meaning have more innovative, sustainable products. We want to appeal to a different demographic. And they wanted to do it in a way that actually bolstered their portfolio of startups that they invested in. And so they came to us and said, you know, we are a food and beverage manufacturing company. They do processing, they do refrigeration, they do packaging. And they didn't want to just kind of donate to kind of a superfluous cause that kind of pushed forward with X, Y, and Z, but more so they wanted to find innovative partnerships with startups that are along their journey, but not quite found that product market fit into creating new innovative products that are actually sustainable too. And so in practice, what that looked like is we partnered them and we introduced them to a really hyper efficient cooling technology startup based in Europe that they are looking to integrate within their R&D to make their refrigeration technology more eco-friendly, less energy, less water usage. And then therefore they have now a minority stake investment in this hyper efficient cooling technology startup. And a couple other ones were a bio-friendly packaging material that they can use. There was some water restoration, some filtration technologies. And the way to look at it is this company want to be more sustainable, but they also want to drive business strategy and business goals. And so we kind of fuse the gap between the two and create the relationships and the roadmap to help them actually do it.
Okay, very cool. So it's almost like consulting. They're like, hey, these are our objectives, and you're going and finding a good roadmap, and you're finding partners for them to achieve those objectives. Is that fair?
Exactly. Yeah. And we look at the angle of like all companies are at a different stage in their journey. You know, sustainability is a little bit of a buzzword. We don't actually consider ourselves a sustainability company, but we help with that kind of angle of business. And so whether it's they're taking their first steps, they don't know what to do, we kind of help pave that first direction, or they're more advanced, they already have these initiatives, these professionals in these roles. We say, okay, now how can we take you to the next level still? And that's where we come in.
Okay. This is such a fascinating concept. I want to dive into like what you're doing and how that works and who else is doing it, that kind of stuff. But I'm also curious, like, what inspired you to want to get into this? Like, what's your story of getting started?
Yeah. Oh, this is a good one. I think let's go back a little bit to maybe my first business that I started. It was I was working simultaneously at a litigation consulting firm, very suit and tie corporate, traveling around the world working with attorneys, like very hot shot right out of undergrad. And like every millennial, I hated every second of it. I want to do something with a little bit more impact, right? I'm not the type of person that throws around impact as this like buzz, fluffy word, but more so, how do I actually create some sort of substantial benefit with the work that I'm doing? And so that got me really integrated with the social entrepreneurship scene. You know, using business as a catalyst for change, using innovative thinking to really design things for a variety of different people, and that kind of propelled myself into working with a couple startups. I decided I want to have more impact, so I went back to school, got a master's in technology for this very thing. And at that time, I started working as innovation specialist for a DC-based nonprofit called PACT. Very large, reputable organization, worked in 40 or so country offices. But my main task, along with private sector engagement, a couple other miscellaneous things, I was tasked to build what we called an open innovation platform. And that essentially allowed our different country offices to crowdsource different problems, challenges, things that they're working on, and through that actually find innovative solutions that their other colleagues or other members of the company have used to, basically tackle some of the challenge that they're facing.
Okay.
And so that concept was really interesting to me because it leaned in the aspect of like, there's a lot of knowledge out there just floating around in the ethos of this world. But oftentimes we operate in such a siloed mentality, we don't know how to access it effectively.
Yeah.
That's what pushed me to do the PhD and to say, how can we use advanced technology, artificial intelligence specifically, to tap into this wide, diverse source of information and knowledge and use it most effectively for corporations and other organizations to push forward with good. So all that being said, that kind of boiled out together to say, okay, we have this like concept of like technology driven collaboration, ecosystem building, open innovation, and all that came together, the concept of companies want to be attached to more altruistic, sustainable, effective causes nowadays, and they need a route to do so. And it costs tons of money to meet people, to put forth these resources, to do the due diligence, the vetting processes, the partnership process. And on the flip side of things, all these organizations can benefit from a larger corporation partner. They get access to supply chains, their platform, their branding, things like that. And so why not use technology to really streamline that process and instead of having this 7-step long convoluted process, just expedite the whole thing with technology, and away they go with like a strategic partnership driven by the advantage of knowing from a foresight perspective what it might actually look like.
I love that. I think that's an amazing business. You're packaged up something that people obviously want and get it done. Talk to me about the internal like process, what it looks like. A company comes to you. What's the process you guys go through to find them, to build the roadmap, find their partners? How are you using AI in it? And talk to me about that.
Absolutely, Jaden. Yeah, so we kind of like have this 3-step process, and kind of we'll boil down to just kind of 2 real simple one's. One's the analysis piece, one's the partnership piece. Okay. So the first part, the analysis, we're using just OpenAI's API. We've created our own LLM version of it that essentially uses a wide variety of data sets and values from sustainability indexes, from corporate social responsibility, all these different things pulled together, and pulled that in with some of my PhD research that essentially looked at how to find correlation between social impact causes, sustainable development goals, United Nations, like sustainability indices, things like that, and then pair it to different industries and sub-industries to basically create a key that says if you are in industry A, sub-industry B, then you are most aligned with these impact causes because of X, Y, and Z.
Do you have like a decision tree kind of almost thing where you're like using using like AI model or whatever, and it's like you have your prompt and it's like answer the question, and they're like, oh, you're in this industry, and then you shoot them over to the next one, and then it like.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's kind of the back and the very like the simplified version of it. And then we package up into a nice, we call it our snapshot analysis. So it pulls all that together, and based off all these different data sets on one side, it spits out, hey, these are some recommendations. These are some creative ideas. These are some goals that might align with what you're doing, and then actually action steps to take it. So that's that initial roadmap, and very much so a decision tree process, like based off the variables where you operate in, things like that. It kind of spits out that actual result of how you can actually follow these to create certain changes depending on where you are in your journey.
I love that. Talk to me about, so you're doing like sustainability. You talked a lot about like wanting to have a positive impact and social good and stuff. are you doing like other things, or is it mostly focused on sustainability? Is what the platform is like helping companies become more?
Yeah, it's a great question. Sustainability, I'd say, is our first kind of niche as a business. The wider picture is strategic partnerships, and that term has a lot of different connotations depending on the industry, the different use cases.
Yeah.
But the way I see it is like sustainability is kind of a subset of the larger picture that we can operate in. And on our platform, the way that we connect companies to different organizations, it could be research groups, it could be individual innovators, it could be nonprofits, other businesses as well. And the classification of these organizations, we call them impact orgs because it's anything with impact. So it could be societal benefit. Environmental is the largest one because of sustainability, and that's what people know. But the big picture is to eventually open up the funnel to say anything related to anything impact driven can be facilitated by these relationships on the platform.
Super cool. And yeah, I mean, I think it's smart to start with one thing, nail that niche, and then expand out. But never want to start too broad. But yeah, that sounds phenomenal. I guess one question I'd be curious to like hear your take on. A lot of these companies coming to you, they're like, let's say they're like, hey, I want to become like more sustainable or something. And you're like, okay, here's like your roadmap. Here's like some partnerships. They're like, cool. Do you ever get criticism, or do people ever worried that you're just like the rubber stamp of like sustainable on top of a company that isn't really sustainable but wants to just kind of like sprinkle a little something on top?
Very much so. And that's actually like one of the big points of like backlash we get is like a lot of companies, greenwashing, bluewashing, there's all these terms saying, yeah, we're doing it, check the box, we donated our 50,000 for the year and like let's move on. One thing that we are actually doing is ensuring that that impact is directly quantifiable, meaning we actually have to prove that they're actually creating these organizations relationships with these organizations, and therefore tying specific metrics to it. So based off the company, their size, where they have these operations, we actually create this like metric, this move the needle metric that basically says if you're a company of this size and this stature, these are some boots that you should be looking to fill, so to speak, to ensure that you're not just like, stamping a certificate saying we're green and doing these eco-friendly things, but not actually walking the walk. And so eventually we want to incorporate the ability to help companies and say like based off where you operate and how large you are and the sway that you could have as an industry leader or whatnot, if you're not actually meeting these goals and criteria, we want to say you're not a good fit for us at this particular time and kind of go from there. And so that will avoid the whole greenwashing concept. It'll avoid the whole, like we are just doing this to make money and just, make these companies bigger and richer, but more so actually ensuring that it's actually pulled together with true value from the get-go.
Yeah, I think that's like such an important part of a lot of these companies doing this is just like the authenticity angle. I feel like it's been so fascinating for me. So I'm originally from Canada and been living in America for the last 6 or so years, and I feel like it's so interesting to see how a lot of the trends in business come from like politics and like all this stuff like sustainability, and like there's like this whole like huge thing about like diversity, equity, inclusion, and then it's like not so popular anymore. People are like, it's just like profitability, and like, oh, maybe some things we're doing were like actually reverse races, whatever. There's like all this like crazy stuff.
It's insane. Yeah.
Do you feel like with what you're doing, like any of it is like trends that will come and go, or I guess like how do you look at it? Like obviously sustainability is important, especially when you start thinking about like environmental impacts and like not polluting, and like there's like things that I think are like fairly, I would say like maybe people politicize them, but they're like kind of like obvious, right? Like, okay, don't cut down all the trees if you want to have a forest, or like whatever, right? Like or like replant the trees if you cut them down, like whatever, I don't know, do your thing. But like, do you think that there's like different trends that could impact this, like your business, or hurt it or help it? Or I guess, how do you like look at like the whole environment? And have you always lived in America?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'm actually Canadian too. I don't know if we talked about that earlier.
Yeah, there we go.
My dad's born and raised in Toronto, so I see both sides of the.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is interesting because, and something that we talk about is like how the European Union is like a little bit more advanced. So they're kind of like a future looking viewpoint of what the states might have. But the whole concept and like what we hear all the time is how polarized ESG in itself is.
Yeah.
And it's I don't know if frustrating is the right word. We just acknowledge it. It's what it is. But we say that we're not like one of these buzzwords companies. We're not a CSR, ESG, sustainability company. But what we stand for is what you're talking about, the deeper layer behind it. The foundation of what we do is companies have to realize that they need to do good. They need to, stop polluting and plundering the planet, stop taking advantage of the social capital assets in which they operate in. And being sustainable from that terminology is good for business. It means
Mm-hmm.
you're using less resources, you're creating products that last longer, you're using less energy and less water, things like that. And what we're trying to really create is this concept that being sustainable or being, altruistic or philanthropic or whatever word you want to put there is actually beneficial for your business in the long run. And what really makes us different is that we actually pull in ROIs on these investments that showcase, like, you're not just writing a check to a nonprofit to the local puppy shelter, which is great, by the way. Like, keep doing that if that's where your heart is. But you also need to tie all these causes deeply within the foundation of your business to make them long-term and actually effective. And that's where we really, really kind of thrive, I think.
Yeah, I love that. And I think that's something I picked up on, like, that felt quite authentic when you're like, we're not like an environmental company. We help people do that. I like that because I think it's very easy if you work in an area that has any sort of feel good thing to call yourself like, we're an environmental, like,
Right.
This is what we are, just to kind of grab onto it. So I feel like it's very authentic when you say that. And I think you're right. I mean, as far as like the ESG scores, it can be like that feels sort of like politicized because you have companies like, I think like British Petroleum that has like a higher ESG score than like Tesla. And then people are like, okay, like something is like,
What's going on here?
Something's kind of
right.
funny. And because you can essentially buy your ESG credits and like, there's all sorts of like funny things that go there. So I think at the end of the day, what you said is totally true, where it's like more than like your ESG score or whatever. It's like focusing on, the driving like actually solid business returns and business outcomes, making sure people are like, this is like better for your business long term. I mean, coming from Canada, something I saw a lot was like logging companies. They would log a whole mountain. Now, if anyone's like mad about that, well, we all use paper, so like you got to get it somewhere. But like as long as they're planting the trees after, and like some companies would come through, they do a bad job planting the trees, they would all like die the next year, and then the mountain's bare or whatever. So that's obviously not great for the environment. But it's also bad for the company because if you want to come back in 20, 30, 40 years and log again, you won't get it. So, I mean, I don't know if this is some like controversial topic of like logging or something, but it seems like you want to make sure you have a sustainable system going for your business, but then also it's good for the planet because the trees are filtering your CO2 and making your air clear, whatever.
Yeah.
So there's a win-win. And if you can find that win-win, I think that's authentic for companies and drive the results.
100%. And I'm by no means a logging expert, but that's a perfect example because you look at it from like the short-term and long-term benefit for companies. And even further, like we say in some of our materials, it's a win-win-win-win because it's like the company's benefiting, the customer's benefiting, the environment is benefiting. Like all these different positive benefits are there for the taking. And if you don't have that mindset and like basically tap it in the realm that like we live in this world nowadays where companies want authenticity, that's a big word, you hit the nail on the head, but also transparency. They really want to know like what you're doing and why you're doing it and that you're actually doing it, ironically. And so like the logging issue is a perfect one. It's like, hey, are we cutting all these trees? Yes, but we're also helping being more recyclable friendly. Like we ensure that we're pulling in X amount of percent and we're doing this and that. And like tapping into that knowledge base of like it's the insight and availability of how to actually create these solutions is there. It's just a matter of pulling the trigger to actually make it happen.
What I'd be curious about, so I think it's super cool, right? The company's like, hey, this is our goal. You grab in all their data, you have your AI models trained, your decision tree and all your research and stuff. You spit out, here's a good roadmap. I'm sure there's like humans looking at it and reviewing it and coming with ideas. Here's some companies you should be working with. You kind of give them this game plan. You talked about transparency, and I almost wonder if you could create an element, or if you have an element, I'm curious, that would be like consumer facing, some sort of report they can put out to customers based off of what they're doing and what the roadmap is. And
yeah, it's a great idea, and we have some like just brainstorming docs of like what the next iterations of the platform looks like. And a lot of people have been like, do you have a B2C version of this? Like I want to see what my company's doing and push forward with this and that. And we're not sure what it looks like, so I might need to tap into some of the insight you provided there. But we want to have some way to showcase that, hey, the company that you're working for, the company that you purchase for, the company that you have some affiliation with is doing this. And through your involvement as an individual, you can contribute, you can support, you can verify, you can do all these different things to essentially give more kudos to this particular company for taking larger strides in the realm of sustainability or impact or whatever you want to say. And it's a really cool concept too, because one of the things we're also looking is like how to position ourselves as a more innovative technology company. And can we include some sort of blockchain tech to ensure that all these, ledgers within the sustainability space, all the different stakeholders involved are actually being honest and trustworthy with what they're doing, because there's so many different players involved. There's a lot of fun ways that we can run with it. And it's one of those, as you as a startup leader, you're like, okay, walk before you can run, first step at a time. But you also have to eye on the stars, feet on the ground sort of mentality, which is fun.
The most lethal phrase that a startup founder will ever hear is like, have you ever thought of, and then it's like, whatever comes after that, you're like, yeah, we thought about it. It's going to take another 500 grand. Like, just let me get product market fit on this thing first.
Yeah,
so,
that one, or when your aunt is like, it'd be cool if you could fill in the blank. You're like, thanks, I appreciate that. We'll put in the docket maybe on the to-do list in the future.
100%. Okay, so for people listening, tell us what's next for the company, some things you're excited about, and what you guys working on next.
Yeah, absolutely. So currently we've been just working from pilot user states, from large companies all the way to small mom and pop, small locally owned shops, really refining and building out the platform to essentially satisfy the needs, the challenges of these customers. And the way that we're looking at our solution is we want to be that one-stop shop. Hey, I want to be better at this. How do you help me do that? And so currently we have the platform built out. We're working with a variety of customers, everything from JBT, World Surf League, to a couple other miscellaneous ones. And right now we're just trying to get our name out there more. And we're actually opening up a fundraising round too. We have a lead investor putting $100K in the company, just doing a pre-seed to put more fuel on the fire, so to speak, and help kind of validate the business that we're growing into. And from there on, we're just trying to really infiltrate a few other industries, trying to get our name out there as far as some conferences we're attending and speaking out in the near future, and really just kind of showcase the amazing work that we're doing and how, I hate to say it, better our solution is than anything else out there on the market.
Yeah.
And so all opportunities to kind of just, speak and, tell people about who we are and what we're trying to build here is just, really gratifying. And that's our main goal at this point in time.
Super cool. Sounds amazing. If people are interested in contacting you, maybe becoming investors in what you're doing, what's a good way for them to get in contact with you?
Yeah, absolutely. So just a quick email, Ricky, R-I-C-K-Y at koru.global is our email. So R-I-C-K-Y at KORU.global. And just kind of, reach out. We'd love to just have open conversations. We're in this very sponge-like state. And so whether you're at a business who's, struggling with this, or you're thinking about implementing it, or you're interested in the investment process, let us know. And we're, love to obviously continue the conversation and go from there.
Amazing. And I'll drop a link in the show notes as well for your website. And for people to find you, probably your LinkedIn or something. And thanks so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. To the listener, thanks so much for tuning into the podcast today. If you learned something new and you appreciated the show, it would mean the world to us if you left us a review on Apple or Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And I hope that you have an amazing rest of your day.